Y/N. Our story begins not just in an office, but in a heart full of quiet hopes. Y/N has been in love with her best friend, Jungkook, for years. Today, she's finally planned to tell him how she feels, believing the perfect moment has arrived. But the heart, especially one guarded by someone as seemingly cold as Jungkook, is a mysterious thing. The string lights twinkled like captured stars above the cozy rooftop terrace, casting a soft, golden glow over the small gathering. The air was warm, filled with the gentle hum of conversation and the distant sounds of the city. It was Jungkook's birthday, and Y/N had poured her entire soul into planning this surprise for him. Y/N, inner monologue. He's going to love it. He has to. I remembered the specific brand of beer he likes, the exact playlist he listens to when he's happy, and even his favorite childhood snacks. This is more than a party. It's my confession. Wrapped in fairy lights and hope, her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs, a mix of nervous excitement and pure, unadulterated love. She adjusted the hem of her new dress, a soft blue she knew he liked, and watched the entrance. Every second felt like an eternity. J/K. Y/N. His voice, deep and familiar, came from behind her. She spun around, a brilliant smile instantly lighting up her face. There he was, Jeon Jungkook, her best friend since university, her person. And, though he didn't know it yet, the love of her life. Y/N. Surprise. Happy birthday, JK. The small crowd of their closest friends erupted in cheers. Jungkook's eyes widened, scanning the terrace, the carefully curated food, the music, the faces. A slow smile spread across his face, and for a glorious moment, Y/N's world was perfect. J/K. You did all this? He asked, his gaze finally settling on her. Y/N. Well, I had some help, she said, her cheeks flushing. But I wanted it to be perfect for you. J/K. It is, thank you. He pulled her into a brief, warm hug, and she breathed in his scent, sandalwood, and something uniquely him. It felt like home. This was it. The moment felt right, charged with a magic she had been waiting for forever. But just as she was about to suggest they get a moment alone, the terrace door opened again. Hana stood there, looking effortlessly beautiful in a simple black dress. Her eyes found Jungkook's immediately, and she held up a small, elegantly wrapped box. Hana. Sorry I'm late. Kook traffic was a nightmare. Happy birthday. Y/N felt the shift in the air. Instantly, Jungkook's attention, which had been fully on her, snapped towards Hana. His smile, which had been warm and grateful, transformed into something brighter, more open. J/K. You made it. I was starting to think you'd forgotten. He walked towards her, meeting her halfway. The easy, intimate way he moved with Hana was a language Y/N had never been able to learn. No matter how hard she tried. Y/N. Inner monologue. It's fine. He's just happy his friend is here. It's fine. It doesn't mean anything. Hana handed him the gift. It's nothing much. Just something I saw and thought you'd love. Jungkook tore open the wrapping with an eagerness he rarely showed. Inside was a vintage, limited edition vinyl record from his favorite underground band. His face lit up with a look of pure, unadulterated joy that Y/N had never seen before J/K. No way. Hana, how did you even find this? I've been searching for this for years. Hana, I have my sources, she said with a playful wink. J/K. This is the best gift anyone's ever given me. Seriously. He pulled Hana into a tight, lingering hug, lifting her off her feet slightly. The group chuckled, used to their dynamic. But for Y/N, it was as if all the air had been sucked out of the rooftop. The meticulous party, the food, the lights. It all suddenly felt cheap and insignificant next to that one. Perfect gift Y/N. Inner monologue, my gift. I got him a new wallet. It's sitting in my bag. It's practical. He needs one. But it's not this. It's not a piece of his soul. The rest of the evening unfolded in slow motion. For Y/N, Jungkook was glued to Hana's side. They had their own jokes, their own stories, their own world. Y/N tried to insert herself, to laugh at the right times. But she felt like a ghost at her own party. The one she had thrown for him, the perfect moment to confess, never came. The magic she had felt earlier had evaporated, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. As the party wound down, she found herself alone by the railing, looking out at the city lights. She heard footsteps and turned, hoping it was him. It was Hana. Amazing party. Y/N, you really outdid yourself. Y/N. Thanks, Hana. I'm glad you could make it. Hana smiled, a genuine, kind smile. Of course, I wouldn't miss his birthday. She looked over her shoulder to where Jungkook was laughing with another friend. He's my best friend. I don't know what I'd do without him. The words were innocent, but to Y/N, they felt like a territorial claim, a confirmation of everything she feared. Y/N. Inner monologue. He's my best friend too, isn't he finally? Jungkook walked over, his arms slung casually around Hana's shoulders. J/K. Hey, we're heading out. Hana knows this great little jazz bar that's open late. You want to come? He asked her. But his eyes were already looking towards the exit, his body angled towards Hana, and the promise of a new adventure. Y/N's heart shattered. The party was over, and he was leaving with her to continue his birthday with her. Y/N. She forced a smile, the hardest thing she'd ever done. No, it's okay. I'm pretty tired. I should clean up here. You two go ahead. Have fun. J/K. You sure? Okay. Thanks again for this. Y/N, it was really great. He gave her a quick, one-armed hug, his mind already elsewhere. J/K. See you tomorrow. Y/N. Yeah, see you tomorrow. She watched them walk away, their laughter fading as they disappeared through the door. The rooftop, once a scene of her dreams, was now just a messy, empty space. She was left alone, surrounded by the remnants of a celebration for a man who had chosen someone else on the night. She was going to give him her whole heart. The fairy lights twinkled mockingly above, illuminating the tears that finally, silently, began to fall /n. A heartbreaking start. But remember, the deepest love stories often begin with a little pain. Where will Y/N go from here? And will Jungkook ever see what was right in front of him all along? A/N, the morning after the party, brings a painful clarity for Y/N. The love she held so close for so long has now become a source of her deepest pain. To protect her heart, she must create a distance she never imagined she would need. The morning sun felt like an intruder, its cheerful rays slicing through the cracks in the blinds and illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. For Y/N, they looked like the shattered pieces of her own heart. She felt heavy, as if the sadness from the night before had seeped into her bones overnight. Her eyes were swollen, and a dull throb had taken up residence in her temples. Y/N, inner monologue, he chose her. He looked at her with a light in his eyes I've never seen directed at me. All my love, all my planning, it was just background noise to his main event. With Hana, she forced herself out of bed, her movements slow and robotic, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She barely recognized the girl looking back. The hopeful, bright-eyed woman from yesterday was gone, replaced by someone with a hollowed-out gaze. Y/N, inner monologue. How long have I been lying to myself, believing that our friendship was a prelude to something more? That all those shared secrets and comfortable silences were building towards a love story. I was just his friend, a convenient, reliable fixture in his life. Never his choice. A hot tear escaped, tracing a path down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily, a new emotion bubbling up beneath the grief, a fierce, protective anger. Y/N, whispering to her reflection, no more. No more waiting. No more hoping for crumbs of his attention. You deserve a feast. You deserve to be someone's first thought, not their backup plan. With a resolve that felt fragile but determined, she got ready. She dressed for herself in an outfit that made her feel strong. She walked to their usual pre-work cafe, but didn't text him. She sat alone at a small table, sipping her coffee and watching people rush by, trying to remember the person she was before Jeon Jungkook became the center of her universe. Y/N, inner monologue. I need space. I need to learn how to breathe without him. As if on cue, her phone buzzed. His name lit up the screen. Jungkook. Hey, thanks again for last night. You're the best. Coffee. I'm running late, but I can meet you at the usual spot in 5. Her heart, that traitorous organ, squeezed painfully. This was their ritual, the cornerstone of their daily routine. He was expecting her to be there, waiting, as always. Y/N. Her fingers trembled as she typed. This small act felt like pushing a boulder uphill. She took a steadying breath and typed back. Y/N. Sorry, already at the office. Got a head start on the day. Catch you later. She pressed send and immediately put her phone face down. It was a lie, but it was a necessary one. The first boundary she was building around her broken heart. Her phone buzzed again, almost instantly Jungkook. "Oh, okay. Everything all right? You seemed a bit quiet at the end of the party y/n." Inner monologue, he noticed. He was so engrossed in Hana, and he still noticed I was quiet. The thought brought a fresh pang of confusion. She replied, forcing a casual tone y/n. "Yeah, just tired from all the planning." "All good. See you at work." She finished her coffee in solitude. The world kept spinning. He was fine. And she was still standing, walking into the office, felt like stepping onto a battlefield. She held her head high, her bag clutched like a shield J/K. "There you are." He was leaning against her desk, a familiar, easy smile on his face. In his hands were 2 paper cups. He held one out to her J/K. "You vanished this morning. I got you your usual. A peace offering for leaving you to clean up last night." It was her favorite vanilla latte. The gesture was so inherently Jungkook, thoughtful, sweet, and completely oblivious to the nuclear bomb he had dropped on her heart. For a second, the old habit tugged at her. The desire to take the coffee, to fall back into their comfortable dynamic, was overwhelming y/n. Inner monologue, "But I can't. I can't pretend I'm okay. This smile is a lie, and this coffee would taste like ashes y/n. Oh, thanks, JK. That's sweet. But I actually just had a coffee, and I'm all coffeeed out." The surprise that flickered in his eyes was unmistakable. She never refused coffee. She never refused him J/K. "Oh, okay." He lowered the cup, his brow slightly furrowed in confusion. "Well, I'll just leave it here for you in case you change your mind." Y/n. She offered him a tight, professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sure. Thanks. I need to dive into these reports. Talk later." She turned decisively to her computer screen, the click of her mouse sounding unnaturally loud in the tense space between them. She could feel his confused gaze burning into the back of her head for a long moment before he finally walked away y/n. Inner monologue. It hurt. Pushing him away felt like tearing out a part of my own soul, but letting him stay close, pretending to be just his friend, would have killed me slowly. From his desk across the open plan office, Jungkook watched her. The rejection of the coffee felt disorienting. Y/n was his constant, his anchor. She was always there, with a warm smile and his coffee order memorized. This new, distant version of her was a puzzle he didn't know how to solve. He saw the careful way she avoided his gaze, the polite, hollow tone of her voice J/K. Inner monologue. Is she really that tired? Or is she upset? But why would she be upset? It was my birthday. She knows Hana and I are close. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the nagging feeling. It was Y/N. She was probably just stressed with work. She would be back to her usual self tomorrow. But as the day progressed, she didn't swing by his desk to drag him to lunch. She didn't send him any of the silly, nonsensical memes she usually did. Her corner of the office felt like it was surrounded by an invisible wall. And for the first time, he found himself on the outside. He was so accustomed to the warmth of her presence. He never realized how much he relied on it until he felt the first chill of its absence. And he was completely in the dark about what had caused it. /N. The first cracks are appearing. Y/N is building her walls to survive, and Jungkook is just beginning to feel the draft. Will he try to understand what's wrong, or will he let the distance grow? The week that followed the birthday party was the longest of Y/N's life. She moved through her days like a ghost, performing her duties at work mechanically. The easy camaraderie she shared with Jungkook was gone, replaced by a polite, painful distance. She ate lunch alone. She left the office on time, and she ignored the familiar ping of his texts. Jungkook felt the shift like a change in barometric pressure. The air around Y/N was cold, and he was stranded in the chill. His jokes fell flat. His offers for coffee were met with a quiet, "No, thank you." The vanilla latte he placed on her desk every morning remained untouched, a daily monument to his confusion. It was Friday, and the office was winding down as Y/N packed her bag. A determined sadness settled over her. She couldn't live in this limbo anymore. Y/N. Inner monologue. I need to end this hope. This pain, it's suffocating me. I'd rather have the clean cut of the truth than this slow bleed. Y/N. His voice stopped her as she reached the door. He was standing by his desk, looking uncharacteristically unsure. Can we talk, please? She hesitated, her hand tightening on the strap of her bag. She nodded slowly, turning to face him, but keeping her distance. J/K. What's going on? Did I do something wrong? He asked, his voice low and earnest. At the party, if you were upset that I left with Hana, I'm sorry. I didn't think. Y/N. You didn't think, she repeated softly, a sad smile touching her lips. You never do, JK. When it comes to me, you never really think. Her use of his nickname, laced with such profound sorrow, struck him harder than any anger could have. J/K. What does that mean? You're my best friend. Of course I think about you. Y/N. Inner monologue, best friend. That word will be the death of me. Are you sure about that? Her voice was a whisper, but it echoed in the silent room. Do you really see me, Jungkook, or am I just convenient? The one who's always there, who plans your parties, who remembers your coffee order, who listens to your problems, the one you don't have to think about, because I'll always just be there. He was taken aback, taking a step towards her. That's not true. You're not just convenient. I'm in love with you. The words fell between them, simple, stark, and world-shattering. The air rushed from Jungkook's lungs. He stood frozen, his mind scrambling to process the confession, to align it with the Y/, and he thought he knew his best friend. Y/N. I have been for years, she continued, her voice gaining a shaky strength now that the secret was out. And watching you with Hana, seeing the way you look at her, I finally understood. I'm not her. I will never be her, and I can't stand next to you any more pretending. just being your friend is enough for me. It's not. It's breaking me. Tears streamed freely down her face now, but she made no move to wipe them away. She was laying her heart bare, and there was no hiding the pain. J/K. Y/N. I don't, he stammered, completely lost for words. His brain offered no coherent thought, only a jumble of shock and a dawning, horrifying realization of his own blindness. Y/N. You don't have to say anything, she said, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I didn't tell you to get a response. I told you so I could finally let go. She turned to leave, the finality in her posture carving a hollow space in his chest. J/K. Wait, but the office door clicked shut behind her, the sound echoing like a gunshot. In the sudden silence, Jungkook was left alone, the ghost of her confession clinging to him. I'm in love with you, the words replayed in his mind, each time amplifying the memory of her tear-streaked face. He thought of every smile he'd taken for granted, every moment of comfort he'd leaned on, every time he'd chosen Hana without a second thought. The coldness he was accused of wasn't malice. It was a neglect so profound he hadn't even seen it. And as the truth settled over him, a cold dread followed. He had just gotten a glimpse of a world without Y/N's light in it, and it was terrifyingly dark. The weekend was a blur of silence. Jungkook didn't call or text. For Y/N, it was a relief. The ball was in his court, and she had finally set down the heavy burden of her secret. She spent the days numb, grieving the loss of a friendship that had been the cornerstone of her life. Monday morning arrived. Y/N walked into the office feeling hollowed out, but resolved. She would be professional. She would be civil. And she would, in time, learn to be okay. But her desk was not as she left it. Sitting squarely in the center was a single, perfect white orchid in a simple ceramic pot. There was no card. Her eyes flickered towards Jungkook's office. His door was closed, the blinds shut. Confusion warred with a flicker of something she refused to name. She ignored the flower and started her work the next day, a Tuesday. A small, beautifully wrapped box sat on her desk. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the cover embossed with a delicate, swirling pattern. Again, no note. Again, his office was a silent fortress. Y/N. Inner monologue. What is he doing? Is this guilt, pity? On Wednesday, it was a book of poetry by her favorite, obscure poet. One she was sure she had only ever mentioned to him in passing years ago. This time, her resolve wavered. This wasn't a generic gift. This was a memory. Thursday brought a reusable travel cup, already filled with a perfectly made vanilla latte from the cafe she loved. It was still warm. Her fingers curled around it, the heat seeping into her skin, a stark contrast to the coldness between them. Y/N. Inner monologue. He remembers. He remembers everything. Friday. 1 week since her confession. She approached her desk with a racing heart. There was no object waiting for her. Instead, a simple, folded piece of notepaper lay on her keyboard. Her name was written on it in his familiar, sharp handwriting with trembling hands. She opened it Y/N. I've spent this week thinking, and I've realized I'm a fool. The orchid was because you once told me they were resilient and elegant, and you admired that. I always admired that about you. The journal was because your words, your thoughts, are the most beautiful things I've ever been privileged to know. I should have told you that. The book was because I remember everything you've ever told me. Every little thing. I just never understood why I held onto those details so tightly. The coffee was because I'm sorry for every latte I brought you that I took for granted. For every morning I didn't realize was a gift. You asked if I see you. I was blind. But now I see only you. Please meet me on the rooftop tonight at JUNKOOK. The paper fluttered from her fingers as she sank into her chair. Her heart was pounding, a wild, hopeful drum against her ribs. She read the note again, and then a third time, committing every word to memory. The workday was an agony of anticipation. At 6:55 p.m., her legs feeling like jelly, she took the elevator to the rooftop. It was transformed. The same string lights from his birthday party were there. But this time, they were the only light, casting a soft, intimate glow. A small, circular table was set for two, with a simple white cloth and a single candle. And standing in the center of it all, looking more vulnerable than she had ever seen him, was Jungkook. He wasn't in a suit. He wore dark jeans and a simple white button-down, his hands shoved into his pockets, his gaze fixed on her. You came, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You remembered my poet, she whispered, her own voice thick. He took a tentative step forward. I remember it all. Y/N, the way you scrunch your nose when you're concentrating. The sound of your laugh when you truly find something funny. The way you always bite your lip before you say something you're nervous about. He took another step. You were never just my best friend. You were my favorite person. I was just too stupid to know what that really meant. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time, they were tears of hope. I thought I needed some grand, dramatic love, he continued, now standing directly in front of her. His eyes, dark and intense, searched hers. I thought it had to be complicated, but it's not. It's simple. It's you. It's always been you. I was just looking in the wrong direction. Y/N and Hana, she dared to ask, her heart in her throat. J/K is my friend, just my friend. The way I look at her, it's nothing compared to the way my heart stops when you walk into a room. The way I look at you. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing away a stray tear, is how a man looks at the woman he's desperately, irrevocably in love with. The world narrowed to the space between them, to the warmth of his hand on her skin, to the raw honesty in his eyes. Y/N, Jungkook. J/K, I love you. Y/N, not as my best friend, but as the woman I want to share every coffee, every sunset, every tomorrow with. Please, he whispered, his forehead leaning against hers. Give me a chance to love you the way you've deserved to be loved all along. And as the city lights twinkled below them, under the canopy of fairy lights that had once witnessed her heartbreak, Y/N found her answer not in words, but in action. She rose onto her toes and closed the final, fragile distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that felt less like a beginning and more like a homecoming dot. It was soft and tender and held a lifetime of waiting. When they finally parted, breathless, his arms wrapped around her, holding her as if she were the most precious thing in his world. Y/N, whispering against his lips, "It's always been you too." And for the first time in a long time, everything felt perfectly, wonderfully right. The kiss on the rooftop didn't feel like an end, but a glorious beginning. It was as if a missing piece of his soul had finally clicked into place. Jungkook held her close, his arms a secure fortress around her, unwilling to let even a whisper of air come between them. The city's distant hum was a symphony to their newfound harmony. When they finally parted, breathless and foreheads resting together, he kept his eyes closed, savoring the feel of her, the reality of her, in his arms. J/K, whispering, his voice thick with emotion, "I've been such an idiot." Y/N, a soft, tearful laugh escaping her, the biggest. He smiled, the first genuine, unburdened smile she had seen in weeks. "I'll spend every day making it up to you." Y/N, "Starting with dinner?" she asked, glancing at the beautifully set table. J/K. "Starting with forever," he corrected, his tone leaving no room for doubt. He pulled out her chair, his hand lingering on her shoulder as she sat down, a simple touch that sent a thrill through them both. Dinner was a quiet, intimate affair. They didn't talk about work or Hana or the painful week that had passed. They talked about dreams. He told her about his secret desire to learn the piano. She confessed her wish to travel to see the northern lights. They fed each other dessert, and the playful, sweet intimacy felt more natural than any conversation they'd ever had as just friends. Afterward, he took her hand. "Come with me." He led her to the edge of the rooftop, where a comfortable lounge sofa now sat, facing the sprawling city skyline. He sat and gently pulled her down to sit between his legs, her back resting against his chest. His arms circled her waist, holding her snugly against him. He buried his face in the crook of her neck, inhaling her scent, sweet vanilla, and something uniquely her. J/K, his lips brushing against her skin as he spoke. "I don't ever want to let you go." Y/N, leaning into his embrace, a contented sigh escaping her. "Then don't." For a long while, they just sat in silence, watching the lights of the city blink like a field of earthbound stars. His fingers traced idle, soothing patterns on her arm, each touch a silent Y/N. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. J/K. "I'm thinking," he began, his voice a low, tender rumble against her ear, "about how many times I almost held your hand and didn't, how many times I almost kissed you goodnight and stopped myself. I was protecting a friendship I thought was everything, when it was only a shadow of what we could have. He turned her gently in his arms until she was facing him, her legs curled up on the sofa beside him. The look in his eyes was one of pure, unguarded adoration. J/K. I'm thinking that the most beautiful sound in the world isn't music. It's the sound of you saying my name. Her breath hitched. Jungkook, a slow, devastatingly handsome smile spread across his face. See, he leaned in, but instead of capturing her lips, he began to place a trail of soft, feather-light kisses along her jawline, each one a brand of his devotion. J/K, muttering between kisses, I love you for your strength, for your kindness, for the way you see the good in everyone. He moved to her temple. For your brilliant mind. His lips brushed her eyelid. For the beautiful soul that looks out through these eyes. Finally, his lips found hers again. But this kiss was different. It was deeper, more confident, filled with the certainty of their feelings. It was a kiss that spoke of past loneliness and a future filled with promise. It was a kiss that held apologies and forgiveness, longing and fulfillment, all at once. When they broke apart, both were breathless, their hearts beating in a synchronized rhythm. J/K. Stay with me tonight, he whispered, his request not one of passion, but of companionship. Just stay. Let me fall asleep holding you. Let me wake up and see your face first thing in the morning, and know that this is real. The vulnerability in his request melted the last of the ice around her heart. She saw it now, the cold-hearted boss, the oblivious best friend. It had all been a shield for a man who felt things too deeply. A man who was terrified of losing the one person who truly mattered. Y/N. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. He stood, offering her his hand. As they walked, fingers laced tightly together towards the elevator, the world felt new. The silent office, the empty hallway, the elevator ride down, everything was imbued with a sacred, romantic significance. In the quiet of his apartment, under the soft glow of a single lamp, they simply held each other, wrapped in his embrace, her head on his chest, listening to the steady, strong beat of his heart. Y/N knew this was more than romance. This was a love that had been years in the making, a love that had been tested by pain and strengthened by truth. It was a love that was, finally, and wonderfully, theirs. The first rays of dawn painted Jungkook's bedroom in soft shades of gold and gray. He woke slowly, consciousness returning not with the jarring ring of an alarm, but with a profound sense of warmth and rightness. There was a weight on his chest, a gentle pressure against his side. He looked down Y/ and was still asleep, curled into him, her head nestled in the hollow of his shoulder. One of her hands was splayed open on his chest, right over his heart, as if claiming it even in her dreams. Her breathing was deep and even, a soft, soothing rhythm in the quiet room. J/K. Inner monologue, this is real. She's really here. A wave of emotion, so powerful it stole his breath, washed over him. It was a mixture of awe, gratitude, and a fierce, protective love that felt as ancient as the stars outside the window. He carefully, so as not to wake her, tightened his arm around her, pulling her just a fraction closer. He pressed a lingering kiss into her hair, inhaling the sweet, sleepy scent of her. He spent what felt like an eternity just watching her, memorizing the way her eyelashes fanned against her cheeks, the gentle part of her lips, the absolute peace on her face. This was the view he wanted for every morning of his life. N began to stir. A soft sigh escaped her, and she nuzzled unconsciously deeper into his neck before her eyes fluttered open. For a moment, there was a flicker of confusion, and then her gaze focused on him. The confusion melted away, replaced by a shy, breathtaking wonder, and then a smile that outshone the rising sun-N. "Good morning," she whispered, her voice husky with sleep J/K. "The best morning," he replied, his voice low and filled with reverence. He shifted, rolling onto his side so he could face her fully. The sheets tangled around them, creating an intimate cocoon. He reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair from her forehead, his fingers tracing the line of her brow, her cheekbone, her jaw J/K. "I was afraid I'd dreamed you." Y/N. "I was afraid I'd wake up and you'd be gone," she admitted softly, her hand coming up to cover his where it rested against her cheek J/K. "Never," he vowed, his eyes locking with hers, the intensity in them leaving no room for doubt. "I'm not going anywhere, ever again." He leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a kiss of passion, but of promise. A soft, tender meeting of lips that spoke of good morning, and I'm here, and this is forever. It was slow and sweet, a languid exploration that tasted of sleep and a new beginning. When they parted, they simply lay there, noses touching, sharing the same air, wrapped up in each other. The outside world with its deadlines and responsibilities didn't exist. There was only this room, this bed, this sacred space they had created. Y/N. "What time is it?" she murmured, her fingers now tracing the lines of his palm J/K. "Time for me to make you breakfast," he said, making no move to get up. Y/N. "You cook, J/K." "For you," he said, a playful glint in his eye. "I will learn. But for today, I make a mean bowl of cereal, and I can definitely manage toast." She laughed, the sound like music in the quiet room. A gourmet feast. He finally, reluctantly, untangled himself from her and the sheets. But before he got out of bed, he leaned down and kissed her once more. A quick, hard kiss that was full of unspoken J/K. "Don't move. I'll be right back." He padded out to the kitchen, and Y/N lay back against the pillows, hugging his to her chest. She could hear him clattering around, humming a tune she didn't recognize. A feeling of pure, unadulterated happiness bloomed in her chest, so bright and warm it was almost overwhelming. He returned a few minutes later, looking adorably proud, carrying a tray. On it were 2 slightly charred pieces of toast, 2 bowls of cereal, a glass of orange juice, and a single daisy he had apparently pilfered from a small vase in his living room. perched precariously on the edge of a plate Y/N, her heart swelling. You picked me a flower, J/K, setting the tray carefully between them on the bed. It reminded me of you. Simple, beautiful, brightening up the whole room. He sat facing her, their knees touching under the covers. They ate their simple breakfast, feeding each other bites of toast, their laughter easy and light. It was the most mundane of activities, yet it felt more intimate than any grand gesture. This was the fabric of a shared life, and they were weaving the first golden thread. As they finished, Jungkook took her empty bowl and placed it back on the tray. He then took both of her hands in his expression growing serious again, though his eyes were soft. J/K. Today and every day after this, I am yours. Publicly, proudly, completely. No more hiding. No more secrets. Y/N. I like the sound of that, she said, squeezing his hands. I'm yours too. The first morning together became a promise of countless more mornings, of shared breakfasts, of sleepy kisses, and of a love that had found its home in the soft, quiet moments after the dawn. The decision was spontaneous as they finished their breakfast in bed. A beam of sunlight streamed through the window, painting a bright rectangle on the floor. J/K. Let's not go to work today, Jungkook said suddenly, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. Y/N. We can't just skip, she replied, though her protest was weak. The idea was incredibly tempting. J/K. Why not? He challenged, a playful smirk on his lips. The CEO is highly recommending it, says it's for a very important team-building exercise. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Just the two of us. An hour later, they were driving out of the city, the top down on his convertible, the wind whipping through their hair. He had packed a simple picnic basket, refusing to let her see what was inside. The further they got from the skyscrapers, the lighter Y/N felt. It was as if they were leaving all the old pain and confusion behind in the dust. He drove them to a secluded spot by a lake he knew, a place where the water was crystal clear, and the only sounds were the birds and the gentle lapping of waves. He spread out a thick blanket under the shade of a large willow tree. J/K. Team building exercise number 1, he announced, pulling out a frisbee. Improves coordination and communication. Y/N. Laughing. Is that so? J/K. Absolutely. They ran around like kids, shouting and laughing, the frisbee sailing between them under the bright blue sky. After they were breathless and slightly sweaty, they collapsed onto the blanket, shoulders touching. J/K. Exercise number 2, he said, pulling the picnic basket closer. Sustenance. He unveiled the feast: fresh strawberries, a baguette, 2 types of cheese, and a small container of chocolate-dipped biscuits. It was simple, but perfect. Y/N. You did all this, J/K. I may have called my assistant, he admitted with a guilty grin. But I told him exactly what to get. I remembered you love strawberries. They fed each other pieces of cheese and bread, their fingers brushing, their eyes speaking a language more eloquent than words. He lifted a strawberry to her lips, and when she bit into it, a drop of juice trailed down her chin. He didn't reach for a napkin. Instead, he leaned in and gently kissed it away, his lips soft and warm against her skin. Y/N. Her breath catching. Jungkook, J/K. I love the sound of my name on your lips, he murmured, his face still close to hers. Say it again. Y/N. Jungkook. He kissed her then, a kiss that tasted of sunshine and sweet strawberries. It was slow and deep, filled with the joy of their escape and the certainty of their feelings. When they finally parted, they were both breathless. J/K. I have one more exercise, he said, his voice husky. He lay back on the blanket and pulled her down to lie beside him, her head on his shoulder. They looked up through the willow branches at the patches of blue sky. J/K. This one is the most important. It's called Just Being Together. Y/N. I think I'm very good at this one. J/K. You're a natural. They lay there for hours, talking and dozing in the dappled sunlight. He told her stories from his childhood she'd never heard. She confessed silly fears she'd never told anyone. There were no titles here, no CEO, no employee, no best friend. There were just two people falling in love all over again, but this time with their eyes wide open. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, he propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her. His expression was so full of love, it made her heart ache. J/K. This has been the best day of my life. Y/N. Mine too. J/K. Good, he said, leaning down to kiss her once more. A slow, lingering promise under the setting sun, because it's only the first of many. The following Monday, walking into the office hand in hand with Jungkook felt like stepping onto a stage. Y/NS heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic mix of nerves and exhilaration. She could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on them, the sudden hush that fell over the open plan office, followed by the frantic whispering Y/N. Inner monologue. Everyone is staring. What are they thinking? J/K. His voice was a low, steady murmur, his grip on her hand tightening reassuringly. Just look at me. She tore her gaze from their curious colleagues and looked up at him. He wasn't looking at anyone else. His entire focus was on her, his eyes soft, a small, private smile playing on his lips. In that moment, the staring ceased to matter. He didn't drop her hand when they reached her desk. Instead, he turned to face her, placing his other hand on her waist. J/K. I'll see you for lunch, he asked, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. It wasn't just a question, it was a statement, a declaration. Y/N. Nodding, a genuine smile breaking through her nerves. Yes. He leaned in and pressed a soft, deliberate kiss to her forehead, lingering for a moment. A collective, almost imperceptible gasp rippled through the office. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining with pride. J/K. Good. He gave her hand one final squeeze before finally letting go and walking towards his own office. His posture relaxed and confident the second his door closed. A flurry of activity surrounded Y/N. Y/N, is it true, you and Mr. Jeon? Oh my God, when did this happen? Before she could even form a response, Jungkook's voice, calm but firm, came over the intercom. Could I have everyone's attention, please? The office fell silent again, all heads turning towards his office door, which was now open. He stood there, leaning against the frame J/K. I won't take up much of your time. I just wanted to make one thing clear. His gaze swept over the room before landing firmly, lovingly, on Y/N. Y/N is not just my colleague. She is the most important person in my life. I would appreciate it if everyone would extend to her the same respect and professionalism you always have. That's all. Thank you. He didn't wait for a reaction. He simply nodded, gave Y/N one more warm look, and retreated into his office, closing the door. The silence that followed was stunned. Then, one by one, people turned back to their work. The whispers now hushed, and surprisingly, tinged with a sense of respect. The message had been received. This was not office gossip. This was a fact, stated by the CEO himself. Y/N, inner monologue. He didn't just hold my hand. He stood in front of everyone and claimed me. He asked for their respect for me. The warmth that flooded her was more potent than any embarrassment. He had shielded her from the speculation, not by hiding, but by proudly placing himself between her and any potential negativity. The day proceeded with a new normal. When Hana walked in, Y/N braced herself, but Hana simply walked up to her desk, a genuine, if slightly wistful, smile on her face. Hana, I'm happy for you both. Truly. He looks at you like you invented the sun. Y/N. Thank you, Hana. Hana, he's been in love with you for ages, you know. He was just too dense to realize it. The words healed a final, hidden bruise on Y/N's heart at lunchtime. True to his word, Jungkook emerged from his office and walked directly to her desk. He didn't ask. He simply offered his hand J/K. Ready? She took it, and they walked out of the office together, under the full gaze of their colleagues. But this time, Y/N held her head high. She wasn't just the woman dating the boss. She was the woman the boss loved, respected, and had proudly claimed in front of everyone sitting across from him in the small Italian restaurant down the street, the sunlight catching the gold in his brown eyes. She knew this was more than a romance. It was a partnership. He had given her his heart, and in front of the whole world, he had given her his unwavering support. Y/N. Thank you, she said softly, reaching for his hand across the table. For this morning, J/K. He laced his fingers through hers, his thumb stroking her knuckles. There's nothing to thank me for. I should have done it a long time ago. I want the whole world to know you're mine. Y/N, and I want them to know you're mine, she replied. Her voice, firm, slow, deeply satisfied smile spread across his face. J/K. Good. because I am. Completely. The public declaration had shifted something fundamental between them. The last vestiges of uncertainty evaporated, replaced by a profound, comfortable intimacy that seemed to hum in the air around them. That evening, they found themselves back at Jungkook's apartment, the city lights just beginning to glitter outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. He closed the door behind them, and in the quiet of the entryway, he didn't turn on the lights. Instead, he simply turned and pulled her into his arms, holding her close, his chin resting on top of her head J/K, letting out a long, contented sigh. Finally, alone, Y/N, melting into the embrace, her arms winding around his waist. It was a good day. J/K, the best, he murmured into her hair. But this is better. He leaned back just enough to cradle her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. His eyes, dark and intense in the dim light, searched hers J/K. I don't think I'll ever get tired of looking at you. Y/N. Good, she whispered, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. Because I don't plan on going anywhere. A slow, devastating smile touched his lips. Promise, Y/N. Promise. That one word seemed to break the last of his restraint. He lowered his head and captured her mouth in a kiss that was anything but soft. It was hungry, deep, and full of a week's worth of pent-up longing. It was a kiss that spoke of public propriety finally being shed, of private desires being unleashed. His hands slid from her face, down her back, pulling her flush against him, until not a sliver of light could pass between them. She met his fervor with her own, her fingers tangling in the soft hair at the nape of his neck, pulling him closer, deepening the kiss. They stumbled through the dim apartment, a tangled mess of lips and seeking hands, never breaking contact. His back connected with the wall next to his bedroom door with a soft thud, and he used it as leverage to spin them, gently pressing her against it instead. He broke the kiss, both of them breathing heavily, their foreheads resting together J/K, his voice a ragged whisper. I've wanted to do that all day. Every time you smiled at me in the office, every time you said my name, it was all I could think about. Y/N. Then stop thinking, she breathed, pulling his mouth back to hers. This kiss was slower, more explorative. His lips trailed from her mouth, down the line of her jaw, to the sensitive spot below her ear, eliciting a gasp from her. His name was a sigh on her lips J/K. Say it again. Y/N. Jungkook, he groaned, his hands sliding under her blouse, his warm palms splaying against the bare skin of her back. The feeling of his skin on hers was electric, sending shivers through her entire body. He picked her up then, her legs instinctively wrapping around his waist, and carried her the few steps to his bed, laying her down amidst the soft duvet as if she were made of glass. He followed her down, bracing his weight on his arms, hovering over her. The moonlight streaming through the window illuminated the raw adoration and desire in his eyes J/K. I love you, Y/N, he said, the words a solemn vow in the quiet room. So much it terrifies me. Y/N. Don't be terrified, she whispered, reaching up to trace his lips. I'm not going anywhere. I love you too. He kissed her again, a deep, soul-searing kiss that felt like a brand. His hands began a slow, worshipful exploration, learning the map of her body, committing every curve and sigh to memory. Every touch, every caress was a whispered promise. Every kiss was a seal on the confession. They had finally spoken aloud. Clothes were shed, not in a frantic rush, but with a reverent slowness, as if they were unwrapping the most precious of gifts. And when they finally came together, skin to skin, breath mingling, it was not just a physical joining. It was the culmination of years of friendship, weeks of pain, and a lifetime of waiting. It was a homecoming later, wrapped in each other's arms, limbs entangled, the sound of their slowing heartbeats the only music. Jungkook pressed a soft kiss to her shoulder. J/K. Stay. Y/N, snuggling deeper into his embrace. I told you I would. J/K. No, he whispered, his voice thick with sleep and emotion. I mean, move in with me. Stay every night. Wake up with me every morning. Make this our home. Tears of pure joy pricked her eyes. She tilted her head back to look at him. In the moonlight, his face was open, vulnerable, and filled with more love than she had ever thought possible. Y/N. Yes, the single word made his entire face light up. He pulled her even closer, his embrace a perfect, warm shelter. J/K. My love, he murmured, the new endearment falling from his lips as naturally as breathing. Y/N. My love, she echoed, her heart so full she thought it might burst. And as they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in the language of touch and whispered promises, they knew this wasn't just a romance, it was a forever, and it had only just begun. The first light of morning found them still entwined, a landscape of bare skin and shared warmth under the rumpled sheets. Jungkook woke first, as was his habit, but this morning was different. This morning, the weight against his side was her. The scent in his lungs was her. The soft sigh of breath against his collarbone was hers. He didn't move, didn't dare disturb the perfection of the moment. His hand, which had been resting on the gentle curve of her hip as they slept, began to move. It was a slow, deliberate caress, his palms skating over the smooth skin of her waist. Memorizing the dip there, she stirred, a soft, unconscious sound escaping her lips as she pressed closer into his touch. Y/N. Voice thick with sleep, Jungkook. J/K. SHHH, my love, he whispered, his lips finding her temple. Go back to sleep. But his touch said otherwise. His fingers trailed upwards, tracing the delicate line of her spine, vertebra by vertebra, until his hand splayed wide between her shoulder blades, holding her securely to him. She was pliant and warm in his arms. Completely trusting, he shifted, just enough to look at her. The early sun cast a golden glow on her face, her lips slightly parted, her eyelashes creating soft shadows on her cheeks. He was overcome by a wave of possessiveness, so fierce it stole his breath. She was his head dipped, and he pressed his lips to the base of her throat, feeling the steady pulse of her lifebeat against his mouth. It was a slow, open-mouthed kiss, tasting the salt and sweetness of her skin. She arched into the contact, a quiet gasp catching in her throat, her hands coming up to tangle in his hair emboldened. His mouth traveled lower, along the elegant line of her collarbone, his tongue darting out to trace the bone. His hands slid down from her back, over the swell of her hips, his thumbs pressing into the soft flesh there, pulling her even more firmly against the hardening length of him Y/N. Kook. His name was a breathy plea, her fingers tightening in his hair J/K. "I'm here," he murmured against her skin, his voice gravelly with desire. "I have you," he rolled, gently shifting her until she was beneath him, caged by his arms. He looked down at her, her hair fanned out on his pillow, her eyes dark and heavy with sleep and want. He lowered himself, capturing her mouth in a deep, languid kiss that was all swirling tongues and shared breath. There was no urgency, only a slow, building heat. His kisses trailed a blazing path down her body. He worshipped the soft swell of her breasts, the sensitive skin of her stomach, the delicate inside of her thighs. Every touch, every kiss was a whispered devotion. His hands were everywhere, learning her, cherishing her, gripping her waist, skimming the outside of her thighs, kneading the flesh of her hips Y/, and was lost in a haze of sensation. Her own hands roamed his body, feeling the powerful muscles of his back flex under her palms, her nails scraping lightly as he moved over her. She could feel the tension coiling in him, the controlled strength he was holding back for her. When he finally slid into her, it was with a slow, deliberate glide that made them both cry out. He stilled, buried deep within her, his forehead pressed to hers, their breaths mingling J/K. His voice a ragged whisper, "Look at me." Her eyes, hazy with pleasure, fluttered open to meet his. In his gaze, she saw not just passion, but an awe so profound it brought tears to her eyes J/K. "I love you," he breathed, the words a vow as he began to move. This was not the frantic coupling of the night before. This was a slow, rolling rhythm, a deep, intimate connection that was as much emotional as it was physical. His thrusts were deep and measured, each one a promise, each one hitting a spot that made her see stars. His mouth was on her neck, her shoulder, her lips, a constant, claiming pressure. Her legs wrapped tightly around his hips, pulling him deeper, meeting him thrust for thrust. The world narrowed to the feeling of his body moving in hers, the sound of his ragged breaths in her ear, the sight of pure, unadulterated love in his eyes. The climax built slowly, a rising tide of pleasure that tightened every nerve ending. When it broke, it washed over them simultaneously. Her cry was muffled against his shoulder, her body convulsing around him. His own release was a groan of her name, a shuddering collapse as he poured himself into her, his entire body trembling for a long time. They simply lay connected, his weight a welcome comfort, their hearts hammering a frantic, synchronized rhythm against each other's chests. He was still inside her, and neither of them wanted the connection to break finally. He shifted, rolling onto his side, but pulling her with him, keeping her tucked tightly against his body. His arms were a fortress around her, his lips placing soft, sated kisses along her hairline Y/N. Her voice was a weak, happy murmur, "Good morning." J/K, a low, rumbling laugh vibrated through his chest and into hers. The very best morning. They lay like that as the sun climbed higher, their bodies speaking a language of touch more intimate than words ever could. In the quiet warmth of the dawn, they had found a new level of closeness, a sacred space where two souls had become irrevocably, beautifully one. The decision to move in together was executed with a quiet, joyful efficiency that surprised them both. It wasn't about merging two separate lives, but about building one together from the ground up. Her plants found sunny spots on his balcony. His collection of vintage vinyl was carefully integrated with her books on the living room shelves. His large, minimalist bed became their bed, now adorned with the soft, colorful throw blanket she loved. It was on a rainy Saturday, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, that the new rhythm of their life truly began. The steady drum of rain against the windows created a cozy, secluded world just for them. Soft jazz played from his speakers, a new tradition they'd started. Y/N was kneeling, carefully arranging books. When she felt his presence behind her, she didn't need to turn. She knew the feel of his energy, the warmth that preceded his touch. His hands came to rest on her shoulders, his thumbs pressing gently into the tight muscles. Y/N, a soft sigh escaping her. Right there. J/K, his voice a low rumble. You've been hunched over for an hour. His hands began a slow, kneading massage, working their way from her shoulders down the length of her spine. It was an intimate, caring touch that had nothing to do with passion and everything to do with devotion. She leaned back into his ministrations, her eyes fluttering closed when his fingers reached the small of her back. They stilled. He slowly sank to his knees behind her, his chest pressing against her back. His arms wrapped around her waist, and he buried his face in the crook of her neck, simply holding her. J/K. This is all I've ever wanted, he whispered, his breath warm against her skin. This quiet, you here with me, Y/N. She covered his hands with hers, lacing their fingers together. No more separate goodbyes in the morning, J/K. No more sleeping alone, he added, his voice thick. He turned her in his arms there on the floor, amidst the cardboard and memories. The look in his eyes was one of pure, unguarded adoration. He leaned in and kissed her, a slow, deep kiss that tasted of coffee and a future they were building together. His hands came up to cradle her face, his touch infinitely tender. When they parted, breathless, he didn't go far. His forehead rested against hers. His eyes closed J/K. "I want to know every part of you," he murmured. "Not just the happy parts. The morning parts, the tired parts, the parts that get frustrated with boxes that won't open." "Y/N, you already do," she whispered back. "You know me better than anyone ever has." A soft smile touched his lips. He shifted, pulling her into his lap, her back against his chest, his legs framing hers. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close as they watched the rain streak down the window pane. His hands began to move again. But this time, it was different. One hand splayed possessively over her stomach, holding her secure against him. The other hand slid up under the soft fabric of her t-shirt, his palm warm and rough against the smooth skin of her ribcage. It wasn't a demand, but an exploration. A reclaiming Y/N. She arched into his touch, a soft sigh escaping her. He nuzzled her hair aside, his lips finding the sensitive skin of her neck. He didn't kiss her, just pressed his mouth there, breathing her in. His hand on her stomach slid lower, his fingers splaying over her hip bone, gripping her firmly, anchoring her to him. J/K. "Mine," he breathed against her neck. The word, a low, possessive vibration that went straight to her core. Y/N. "Yours," she affirmed, turning her head to capture his lips in a searing kiss. It was a kiss of ownership, of mutual surrender. His hand tightened on her hip, pulling her even closer against the hard plane of his body. The world outside, the rain, the unpacked boxes, it all faded away. There was only the feel of his hands on her skin, the taste of his mouth, and the steady, strong beat of his heart against her back. This was their new rhythm, not of frantic passion, but of a deep, abiding connection that pulsed in the quiet moments, in the shared spaces, in the simple, profound act of building a home and a life together. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a world washed clean and sparkling in the afternoon sun. The last of Y/N's boxes sat by the door, a final testament to her old life, now fully integrated into his. No, theirs. They stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the quiet evidence of their union. His black mug stood next to her floral one on the kitchen counter. Her laptop charger was tangled with his on the floor by the sofa. It was messy and imperfect, and utterly perfect. Jungkook watched her as she looked around, a soft, contented smile on her face. He came up behind her, his arms sliding around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. He buried his face in the curve of her neck, inhaling the familiar scent that now meant home. J/K. "Happy," he murmured, his lips brushing her skin. Y/N. Leaning back into his solid warmth, her hands covering his where they rested on her stomach. So happy it almost hurts. He turned her in his arms, his expression suddenly serious, his dark eyes searching hers. The playful intimacy of the morning had settled into something deeper, more profound. J/K. "I never knew what it meant to have a home until you," he said, his voice low and raw. It was just a place I slept. Now it's wherever you are. The sound of your laugh in the hallway, the smell of your shampoo on my pillows, the sight of your shoes by the door. That's home to me now. Tears welled in Y/N's eyes, but they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. She reached up, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. Y/N. You are my home, Jungkook. You always have been. I was just waiting for you to open the door. A shuddering breath escaped him. He captured her hand, pressing a fervent kiss to her palm, then to the inside of her wrist, feeling the frantic flutter of her pulse. J/K. I want to give you everything, he whispered against her skin, his voice thick with emotion. Every dream you've ever had, every morning, every night. I want to build a life with you that's so full of love. There's no room for anything else. He lowered himself then, not onto one knee, but onto both, wrapping his arms around her hips and pressing his face against her stomach. It was a gesture of surrender, of devotion, of utter vulnerability. Y/N. Her breath caught, her hands flying to his hair. Kook, J/K. His voice was muffled against her, but she heard every word. I don't have a ring yet. I want you to choose it with me. But I have my heart. It's yours. It always has been. He looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. Marry me. Y/N, make me the happiest man in the world. Be my wife. The world stopped. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the frantic beating of her heart. She looked down at the man at her feet, the cold-hearted boss, the oblivious best friend, the love of her life, and saw her entire future in his eyes. Y/N. Her voice was a tearful, joyful whisper. Yes. The word was barely out of her mouth before he was on his feet, crushing her to him in an embrace that lifted her off the floor. He spun her around, a laugh of pure, unbridled euphoria bursting from his chest. Yes, he repeated, as if he couldn't believe it. Y/N. Laughing through her tears, her arms tight around his neck. Yes, 1,000 times, yes. He set her down gently, his hands cradling her face, his thumbs wiping away her happy tears. His kiss was not one of passion, but of promise. It was soft, reverent, and filled with a love so deep it felt eternal. It was a seal on their future when they parted. He rested his forehead against hers, their breaths mingling. J/K. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that answer. Y/N. The rest of my life began the moment I met you, she whispered. This is just the next chapter. He kissed her again, deeper this time, pouring all his love, his hope, his forever into it. His hands slid from her face, down her back, pressing her close until every line of her body aligned with his. It was a hug that spoke of belonging, of a journey ended, and a new one beginning. In the quiet of their sun-drenched living room, surrounded by the scattered pieces of their joined lives, they held each other. There were no more words needed. The touch of their hands, the meeting of their lips, the synchronized beat of their hearts. It was all a silent, perfect vow. The cold-hearted boss had not just fallen in love, he had found his soulmate, his partner, his forever. And in her arms, he knew he was finally, completely, home. The last box was finally unpacked, the final book placed on the shelf. Their home was complete. The rain had long since stopped, and a deep, velvety night had fallen. The city lights below their window shimmering like a scattered necklace. They stood in the middle of the living room, bathed in the soft glow of a single floor lamp. A sense of profound peace settled over them. The move was over. This was their life now. Jungkook looked at her, really looked at her, in the quiet intimacy of their shared space. Her hair was slightly messy from the day's work, and she had a smudge of dust on her cheek. She had never looked more beautiful. He didn't say a word. He simply walked to her, his steps silent on the hardwood floor. He stopped just inches away, his dark eyes holding hers captive. Slowly, he raised his hand and gently brushed the smudge from her cheek with his thumb, his touch lingering J/K. "My wife," he whispered. The words, a reverent caress. A shiver ran through her. He hadn't said it as a question, but as a fact. A truth that was now etched into the very air they breathed. Y/N. "My husband," she breathed back, her voice barely audible. That was all the invitation he needed. His hands came up to frame her face, his touch impossibly gentle. He leaned in, and his lips met hers in a kiss that was so soft, so achingly tender. It brought fresh tears to her eyes. It was a kiss of completion, a kiss that sealed the promises they had made on the sun-drenched floor. But the tenderness soon ignited into a slow, burning heat. The kiss deepened, his tongue sweeping into her mouth, tasting, claiming. One of his hands slid from her face, down the column of her neck, his thumb stroking the frantic pulse at its base, his other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him until she could feel the hard, unyielding lines of his body from her chest to her thighs. Y/N. A soft moan escaped her as her hands came up to clutch at his shoulders. He walked her backward, never breaking the kiss, his mouth a brand of possession on hers. They moved through their home, in a slow, sensual dance. His lips left hers to trail a path of fire down her jaw to her neck, where he sucked gently, knowing he was marking her, claiming her as his in the most primal way. Y/N. Kook. His name was a gasp. J/K. "I love it when you say my name like that," he growled against her skin, his hands sliding under the hem of her shirt. His palms were hot as they skated up her bare back, making her arch into him. He maneuvered them into the bedroom. The moon, their only witness. He didn't rush. He took his time, undressing her with a reverence that made her heart ache. Each new inch of skin revealed was met with a soft kiss, a lingering touch. His fingers traced the line of her collarbone, the curve of her breast, the dip of her navel, as if he were memorizing a sacred text. When she was bare before him, he stepped back for a moment, just looking at her, his chest rising and falling rapidly. J/K. "You are so beautiful," he said, his voice raw with emotion. You take my breath away. Then he was on her, not with force, but with a consuming passion. His mouth found hers again in a deep, hungry kiss as his hands explored every curve, every hollow. He kissed her until she was dizzy, until her hands were frantically pulling at his clothes, needing to feel his skin against hers. When they were both finally naked, skin to skin in the moonlit room, he hovered over her. He braced himself on his forearms, his face inches from hers J/K. Look at me, he commanded softly. She opened her eyes, drowning in the dark pools of his J/K. I am yours, every part of me, forever. And as he slid into her, a slow, perfect joining, it felt different than before. It was deeper, more profound. It was the physical manifestation of the vow they had made. His thrusts were deep and measured, a rhythm of love and commitment. His mouth was everywhere on her lips, her breasts, her neck whispering words of love and adoration between searing kisses Y/N. She clung to him, her legs wrapped tightly around his waist, meeting his every movement. I love you so much. Her whispered words pushed him over the edge. His release was a groan of her name, a shuddering collapse that she felt deep within her soul. Her own climax crashed over her a second later, a wave of such intense pleasure it was almost painful, tears of pure ecstasy streaming from the corners of her eyes. He collapsed onto her, his full weight a welcome comfort, his face buried in her hair. They lay like that for a long time, still joined, their hearts hammering a frantic, synchronized rhythm against each other's chests slowly. He rolled onto his side, pulling her with him, keeping her tucked tightly against his body. His arms were a fortress around her. He didn't speak. He just held her, his lips occasionally pressing soft, sated kisses to her shoulder. Her hair taut in the language of the night, surrounded by the silence of their new home. They had spoken the most important words of all, not with their voices, but with their bodies, their touches, their kisses. They had written the first page of their forever, and it was more beautiful than either of them could have ever dreamed. The first light of dawn was a pale, hesitant brushstroke against the sky when Jungkook awoke. The deep, velvety black of night had softened to a charcoal gray, and in the quiet stillness, the world felt new, as if created just for them. He was on his side, and she was curled against him, her back pressed to his chest, her body a perfect curve fitting into his. One of his arms was draped heavily over her waist. His hand splayed possessively across her stomach. He didn't move. He simply lay there, breathing her in, feeling the gentle rise and fall of her breath beneath his palm. This was peace. This was the sanctuary he never knew he was searching for. Slowly, so as not to wake her, he began to trace idle patterns on her skin. His fingertips drifted over the soft plane of her stomach, up the delicate ladder of her ribs, learning the geography of her body in the half-light. She stirred with a soft, sleepy sound, pressing back into him Y/N. Her voice, a muffled murmur against the pillow. Jungkook, J/K. "SHHH, my love," he whispered, his lips finding the sensitive spot where her shoulder met her neck. "It's early." But his touch betrayed his words. His hand slid lower, his fingers splaying over the gentle swell of her hip, gripping her firmly, pulling her closer still, until there was no space left between them. He could feel the softness of her skin, the warmth of her sleep-languid body, and a deep, possessive love surged within him. He nuzzled her hair aside, his lips finding the bare skin of her back. He didn't kiss, just pressed his mouth there, breathing her in, feeling the life pulse beneath her skin. His other hand came up, his fingers tangling gently in her hair, tilting her head just enough to give his mouth better access. He began to place a trail of soft, open-mouthed kisses along her shoulder blade. Each one was a brand, a silent promise in the pale dawn. His hand on her hip began to move in a slow, circular massage, kneading the soft flesh, a rhythm that was both soothing and intensely arousing. Y/N. A soft sigh escaped her, her body arching slightly into his touch. "Your hands, J/K. What about them?" he murmured against her skin, his voice gravelly with sleep and desire. Y/N. "They know me," she breathed. "They know exactly where to touch me." A low groan rumbled in his chest. He shifted, rolling her onto her stomach without ever breaking contact. He loomed over her, his knees framing her hips, his hands sliding up her back, pressing down with a firm, worshipful pressure. Y/N. She turned her head to the side, her eyes closed, a soft moan escaping as his thumbs found a tight knot of muscle near her spine. He worked the tension from her body with a focused intensity, his strong hands kneading the flesh of her shoulders, her back, the curve of her waist. But the therapeutic touch soon morphed into something else. His hands slid down over the swell of her hips, gripping her, holding her in place. He bent forward, his chest pressing against her back, his lips finding the shell of her ear. J/K. "You are so perfect," he whispered, his breath hot against her skin. "Every single part of you." He kissed his way down her spine, a slow, deliberate pilgrimage. Each vertebra was acknowledged with the press of his lips. When he reached the small of her back, he paused, his hands spreading her apart just enough for him to dip his head and press a searing, open-mouthed kiss to the very base of her spine. Y/N. She gasped, her fingers clutching the sheets. "Kook, please." He didn't need more encouragement. He turned her over, his gaze dark and heavy with need. The first rays of the sun broke over the horizon, spilling golden light into the room, illuminating her face, her body, the love in her eyes. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He lowered himself onto her, capturing her mouth in a deep, consuming kiss. It was a kiss of ownership, of devotion, of a love that had been tested and had emerged unbreakable. His hands were everywhere, gripping her waist, tangling in her hair, skimming the outside of her thighs. When he entered her, it was with a slow, deliberate glide that made them both cry out. He stilled, buried deep within her, his forehead pressed to hers J/K. "Look at me," he breathed her eyes, hazy with pleasure and love. Fluttered open J/K. "This is forever," he vowed, and began to move. The pace was slow, deep, and relentless. Each thrust was a pledge, each withdrawal a promise of return. His mouth was on hers, her neck, her breasts, a constant, claiming pressure, her legs wrapped tightly around him, her hips meeting his with equal fervor. The world narrowed to the feeling of his body moving in hers, the sound of their ragged breaths, the sight of pure, unadulterated love in his eyes. The climax built not like a storm, but like a rising sun, inevitable, glorious, and all-encompassing. It washed over them in a wave of silent, shuddering ecstasy, so intense it was almost painful. He held her through it, his body trembling, her name a broken prayer on his lips. Afterward, he didn't pull away. He collapsed onto her, his full weight a welcome anchor, his face buried in her neck. They lay tangled together, slick with sweat, their hearts beating a frantic, synchronized rhythm against each other's chests. As the sun climbed higher, painting the room in gold, he finally shifted, rolling onto his side, but pulling her with him, keeping her tucked tightly against his body. His arms were a fortress around her. He didn't speak. He just held her, his lips placing soft, sated kisses along her hairline dot in the symphony of the dawn. They had found their perfect harmony, a rhythm of touch, of whispered promises, of a love so deep it needed no words. It was the rhythm of their forever. The golden light of the morning had grown stronger, filling the room with a warm, buttery glow. They lay entwined in a silence that was more intimate than any conversation. His arm was still a heavy, comforting weight across her waist, his fingers drawing absent-minded circles on her hip. Her head rested on his chest, her ear pressed against the steady, strong rhythm of his heart, a sound that had become her personal symphony of PSY/N. Inner monologue. This is what safety feels like. This is what home sounds like. He shifted slightly, his hand moving from her hip to gently cup her chin, tilting her face up to his. His eyes, dark and soft in the morning light, scanned her features as if he were trying to memorize her all over again. J/K. "I was thinking," he began, his voice a low, morning rough rumble that vibrated through her Y/N. "About what?" she whispered, her fingers tracing the lines of his collarbone. J/K. "About our wedding." Her breath hitched. They hadn't set a date yet, hadn't made any concrete plans. The proposal itself still felt like a beautiful, fragile dream. J/K. "I don't want a big, crowded hall," he continued, his thumb stroking her lower lip. "I don't want hundreds of people we barely know." Y/N. "What do you want?" she asked, her heart beginning to beat a little faster. He leaned in, his lips brushing hers in the softest of kisses before he pulled back, his gaze holding hers captive. J/K. "I want it to be just us, on a secluded beach at sunset, or in a quiet forest with sunlight filtering through the leaves. No distractions, no noise. His voice dropped to a whisper. I want to be able to hear you say, I do. I want to see the exact moment your eyes change when you become my wife. Tears pricked at her eyes. He had put into words the exact secret vision she had carried in her own heart/N. That's all I've ever wanted to, she confessed, her voice thick with emotion. Just you and me. A slow, devastatingly tender smile spread across his face. Then that's what we'll do. He sealed the promise with another kiss, this one deeper, sweeter, filled with the shared dream of their future. His hands began to move again, but this time with a new purpose. They slid down her back, not with passion, but with a profound sense of possession and care. One hand came to rest on the small of her back, pressing her gently closer, while the other hand came up to cradle the back of her head. His fingers tangling in her hair, he rolled, shifting her until she was lying atop him. Her body sprawled over his. He looked up at her, his eyes full of Aj/K. My wife, he said again, as if testing the weight and wonder of the words Y/N. My husband, she replied, leaning down to kiss him. This kiss was different. It was a slow, languid exploration. A silent exchange of vows that were more binding than any official ceremony could ever be. His hands roamed her back, her shoulders, her hips, in a slow, worshipful rhythm. It was a touch that spoke of forever, of a commitment that went beyond the physical. They spent the morning like that, wrapped in each other, talking in soft whispers about their future, about the home they would build, the life they would create, the love that would be the foundation of it all. The outside world, with all its demands, ceased to exist. There was only this room, this bed, and the unspoken vows that hung in the air between them. More real and tangible than anything else. It was a morning of quiet promises, of shared dreams, and of a love that needed no grand gestures. It was perfect. The decision was made. Their wedding would be an intimate affair, a secret shared only with the wind and the waves. The planning was not a stressful series of appointments and decisions, but a quiet, joyful conspiracy between them. They found a secluded villa on a remote beach, its private cove accessible only by a winding path through lush tropical foliage. It was their sanctuary before they had even set foot there the day they arrived. The air was thick with the scent of plumeria and salt. The villa was perfect open-aired, with billowing white curtains that led directly onto the soft, white sand. The only sound was the gentle crash of the turquoise waves as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange, pink, and purple. They stood together at the edge of the water. They had chosen to say their vows at the exact moment the sun kissed the horizon. There was no officiant, no audience. It was just them. Jungkook turned to her, holding both of her hands in his eyes, reflecting the spectacular sunset, held a light she had never seen before, a mixture of pure, unadulterated joy, and a peace so deep it was palpable. J/K, Y/N, he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. From the moment you came into my life, You brought a light I didn't know was missing. You saw the man behind the title, the heart behind the walls. You are my best friend, my confidant, the reason my coffee tastes better in the morning and my world looks brighter in the afternoon. He squeezed her hands, his thumb stroking her knuckles J/K. I promise to cherish you, to stand by you, to be the shelter from your storms and the partner in your adventures. I will love you with every beat of my heart today, and for all the tomorrows we are given. Tears streamed freely down Y/N's face, but she was smiling, her heart so full it felt like it would burst. The setting sun cast a golden halo around him Y/N. Jungkook, she said, her voice clear and strong despite the tears. You are my home. You are the calm in my chaos and the joy in my quiet. You taught me the depth of my own heart and showed me a love I never dreamed possible. She took a shaky breath, her eyes locked with his Y/N. I promise to love you faithfully and fiercely, to challenge you and champion you, to build a life with you that is filled with laughter, understanding, and an endless supply of shared vanilla lattes. I choose you today, and I will choose you every single day for the rest of my life. As the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon, leaving the sky ablaze with afterglow, he cupped her face J/K. With this ring, he said, sliding a simple, elegant band onto her finger, I make you my wife, Y/N. With this ring, she echoed, her hands trembling slightly as she placed an identical band on his finger. I make you my husband. He didn't wait for a pronouncement. He simply leaned in and captured her lips in a kiss that was more than a kiss. It was a seal, a beginning, a promise etched into the very fabric of the universe. It was soft and deep, filled with the taste of salt from their tears and the sweet promise of their future. When they finally parted, the first stars were beginning to twinkle in the violet sky. He rested his forehead against hers, their breaths mingling J/K. Mrs. Jeon, he whispered, the name a prayer on his lips Y/N. My husband, she whispered back. He swept her up into his arms, her white sundress flowing around them, and carried her across the sand into the villa and into the first moments of their married life. The world was silent, bearing witness to a love that needed no one else's approval. In their secluded sanctuary, they had found the purest form of their forever. The villa was lit only by the moon, and a dozen flickering candles. Petals were scattered across the floor, leading to the bridal suite. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the distant, rhythmic sound of the ocean. It was a scene from a dream. Jungkook stood with her in his arms at the threshold, his gaze so full of love it made her breath catch J/K. Our first night as husband and wife, he murmured. His voice hushed with awe. He carried her inside and set her down gently in the center of the room. His hands came up to frame her face, his touch infinitely tender J/K. I love you, he said, the words simple, but carrying the weight of a lifetime Y/N. I love you more, she whispered, her hands coming to rest on his chest. He shook his head, a slow smile gracing his lips. Impossible. His lips met hers in a kiss that was different from all the others. It was a kiss of ownership, of completion. It was slow and deep, a languid exploration that tasted of champagne and forever. His fingers worked their way into her hair, dislodging the simple flower crown she wore, letting her hair tumble down her back. His hands began to move, sliding down her back, over the silk of her simple sundress. He found the zipper and lowered it with a slow, deliberate pull. The dress whispered to the floor, pooling at her feet. He stepped back, his eyes darkening as he looked at her, bathed in candlelight J/K. "You are a vision," he breathed out, "my wife." He shed his own clothes quickly, his eyes never leaving hers. When he came back to her, skin to skin, the feeling was electric. He wrapped his arms around her, lifting her off her feet and carrying her to the bed, laying her down amongst the soft linen sheets. This time, their lovemaking was not frantic or hungry. It was a slow, worshipful celebration. Every touch was a reverence, every kiss a prayer. He took his time, learning her body as if for the first time. Now, under the sacred seal of their vows, when they finally joined, it was with a profound sense of rightness, a feeling of two souls clicking into place for eternity. That night, they didn't just make love, they cemented a bond that was now unbreakable. Y/N woke to the feeling of lips on her bare shoulder. The morning sun streamed into the room, and the sight of the simple gold band on her finger in the sunlight sent a fresh wave of joy through her. She turned in his arms to find him already awake, propped on an elbow, just watching her J/K. "Good morning, Mrs. Jeon," he said, his voice rough with sleep and happiness. Y/N. "Good morning, my husband," she replied. Her heart swelling, he leaned in and kissed her. A soft, good morning kiss that quickly deepened into something more. The memories of the previous night washed over them. And soon, the morning was spent in a tangle of sheets and slow, sated lovemaking. Their new rings glinting in the sun, they spent the day in their private paradise. They swam in the crystal clear water, fed each other fruit, and danced barefoot on the sand to music only they could hear. It was a day outside of time, a perfect bubble of happiness. That evening, as they watched another spectacular sunset, Jungkook held her close J/K. "This is just the beginning, you know," he said. "Our greatest adventure is just starting. Y/N. I can't wait for all of it," she said, leaning her head against his shoulder. "As long as I'm with you." Returning to the city and their jobs was not a return to the old life, but the start of their new one together. Walking into the office, as Mr. and Mrs. Jeon was met with warm congratulations, the dynamic had shifted permanently. The cold-hearted boss was gone, replaced by a man whose eyes softened whenever his wife entered the room. Their home was no longer just an apartment. It was a living, breathing space filled with their shared love, cooking dinner together, arguing over what to watch, getting ready for work side by side. These simple, mundane moments were now infused with a magic they both cherished one evening. As they were washing dishes together, he wrapped his arms around her from behind, his wet hands on her waist J/K. "This is my favorite part of the day," he murmured into her hair Y/N. "Washing dishes," she laughed J/K. "Being here with you, doing nothing, doing everything." She turned in his arms, her own soapy hands coming to rest on his shoulders. She kissed him, a soft, lingering kiss that tasted of home and future years later. On a balcony, overlooking the same city where their story had almost ended before it began, they stood together. The string lights from his long-ago birthday party were now a permanent fixture on their own balcony. A little girl with his eyes and her smile was sleeping soundly inside, and a positive pregnancy test sat on the bathroom counter. A new secret they had just discovered. Jungkook held his wife close, his arms, as always, her safest place. He looked down at her, his love for her having only deepened and grown more profound with time J/K. "You are my greatest success," he whispered. "My only dream that ever truly mattered. Y/N, and you are mine," she said, her hand resting on her stomach where their new future was growing. "You are my always." He kissed her then, under the twinkling lights, as the city hummed below them. It was a kiss that held their entire story: the pain, the friendship, the confusion, the passion, the promises, and the unwavering, forever kind of love that had conquered it all. The cold-hearted boss had not just fallen in love, he had found his soulmate, built a family, and discovered a happiness so completed, rendered every other achievement meaningless. And in her arms, he knew their ever after was only just beginning.